Now we will talk about the how to use Java SSL to create secure server client sockets. We will briefly talk about the lecture slides, and then we will use the example to show how to program SSL socket in Java. The Java package used for SSL programming is the SSLSocket, which uses the public key and the private key infrastructure. It means that we at least need to know the server's public key to authenticate the server. If we do not need to authenticate the client, then server does not need to know client's public key. Server needs to first generate the public key and private key pair, and then distribute the public key to the client. First, the application needs to generate a key store. And this is a command which should work on Windows machine. It could be different on Linux. The command includes the key tool generate key command, the name and path of the key store file, the ISA algorithm, etc. Please note that the name and the path of the key store can be changed. The result of this operation is the creation of a key store file named as serverkey.js. The next step is to generate a certificate. The command is still keytool export a certificate file SSL1.cer will be generated and exported and stored inside the key store named as serverkey.js. So now let's take a look at the client side. The first step is the same as the server side, to create a key store named as clientkey.js. As the client side, we do not necessarily generate certificate if the client authentication is not required. Therefore, no certification generation will be generated. Instead, the client side will receive certificate from the server. The command is the keytool import. It's a server certificate for ss1.cer, and the destination is the client key.js. This way, the server certificate will be imported to the client side. So now let's take a look at the Java SSL programming example. First, we will discuss the server part. It contains two major parts. The first part is to set path and password, while the second part is the load and the initialization. Please remember that the key store, the public key and private key, and the certificate has already been generated as client server side. Then we will discuss the client side. Assume that the public key and the certificate have already been imported to the key store as the client side. The program will first configure system to set up path and password for key file access. Then the client side initialization will essentially try to create the SSL socket. So let's take a look at the real Java example, which demonstrates the SSL socket communication. So let's first talk about the server, the SSL server.java file. Remember that the key key store certificate file have already been generated and distributed to the client. The other part of this file is similar to the regular server-side network programming. Please note that it used the SSL server socket instead of server socket to listen for connection requests from clients. After the initialization, after the setup and the password setup and initialization, SSL socket will be created and assigned with the IP address. Then the SSL socket will bind with the port number. Finally, it will be ready for listening. Once a legitimate request received, it will grant such request by calling the accept method of the SSL socket class. The communication IO part is the same as regular network programming. So now let's take a look at the client-side programming. As we have discussed, the first part is the configuration. By setting up the path and the password, the next step is to create a SSL socket instance. Makes a connection request by putting the proper IP address and port number the server is listening at. Again, the communication, our part is the same as regular network programming. So that's pretty much about the Java SSL socket programming.